All right, wonderful. Mr. Vargas, how you doing today, sir?
I'm great. How are you, Greg?
Well, I'm good. Healthy and employed, as far as I know. Healthy and employed. So all good things. Appreciate you joining.
That's great. No, thank you.
Square Pizza Pod today. You're coming from California, is that correct?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. How is it today in LA?
Let's see. It is sunny. According to my Apple Watch, it says it's 61 degrees outside, high of 73.
Sounds pleasant. Sounds quite nice.
It is.
Uh, so of course, getting ready this morning, eating my Wheaties, watching my Sports Center. Lakers, are supposed to, they have the second best chances, Sports Center tells me, in the NBA to win the championship this year. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I'm a huge Lakers fan, so
Okay.
I'm behind the team regardless. I go back to the Kareem and Magic days. So we've been very fortunate to have some great basketball teams over the years, and we even have the Clippers now too. So
Sure.
we doubled our chances of being a championship city here in LA.
I guess, I probably shouldn't have assumed you are a Laker fan.
I am, yeah.
I know they have two teams, but maybe that's my own bias that everybody just likes Lakers over the Clippers, but I shouldn't do that.
No, I'm certainly a Lakers fan. I've been my whole life, and
Okay.
I also root for the Clippers when they're not playing the Lakers.
That seems fair. Good for you. More options. Well, I should also say first, happy Hispanic Heritage Month. I know we'll get to more kind of about your work and that work as well. We want to make sure we honor that from the beginning of the podcast today.
Sure.
And I think, also doing some of our research, even before some of the stuff we found, I think you were also a student athlete, at least in high school, if not college. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's actually a place where I learned a lot of great lessons that have helped me throughout my life. So yeah, I played football and basketball and baseball in high school.
Sure.
So I didn't have a day off in 4 years. So that was always fun.
I'd imagine that helped prepare you for some scheduling and professional responsibilities going day by day, from athletics to professional work. Is that fair to assume?
No, absolutely. And you hear it when you listen to people that have been incredibly successful, that I aspire to be as successful or a fraction of their success. People like Kobe Bryant or Serena Williams, Michael Jordan, Katie Ledecky. When you hear them tell their stories, what you don't see is, you see the success, but you don't see the hard work that goes before that success. Kobe didn't become one of the greatest players of all time because he just happened to be born the greatest player of all time. He was one of the hardest working people, legends, athletes ever. And so the whole Mamba mentality is something that I'm very much aligned with. So you just got to get up earlier and go to bed later, and that sometimes you got to do what you got to do to get to to be a champion. Also learned how to be part of a team, as Bill Belichick says, just do your job, right? So everybody that's part of the team has to understand what their job is, and they got to do their job well. And if everybody does their job, great things happen. So yeah, important lessons that I learned from my coaches in high school.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing. I'd imagine too, so much carryover with you as a former student athlete, but also with teams and individuals in professional and non kind of sport professional settings, right? Like your organization, that even if it's not a sports championship, there can be championships won in the day-to-day work of the Hispanic Scholarship Fund.
No, that there's no question. And I completely believe that you have to have that mindset, whatever organization, institution, team you're a part of. So here at HSF, we say we're a fast-paced, high-performance organization. And that is what we share with anyone who wants to be part of the team. And it may not be for everyone, right? Because that's what you come into. You will, whether it's in person or on Zoom, you will certainly note the pace at which people are delivering what they need to deliver because they feel so strongly about the vision and the mission of the organization and what we're trying to do. And then, we also value, we're very detail oriented and value continuous improvement. So those things that I just shared, if you talk to coaches or people that are on championship teams, those are all part of the ethos of how you build, champions, a great team, successful organizations. And so we do our best to, whether we're a nonprofit or not, to emulate those practices. And I think those things have led to us being successful.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing. The focus on details resonates with me, both from my previous life, but also my current life. And also, focusing on details to one person means something to another person. And as you're building a team, leading organizations, leading schools, I think we found getting as specific and as micro as possible in those kind of management expectations is incredibly important, because just that phrase, amongst other phrases, can mean certain things, but looks very specific in the day-to-day operation of an organization.
No, absolutely. And I think you have to have that clarity. Every single person on this team has an accountability, and they know what their accountability is. So if you ask someone, what's your accountability? They may not have it memorized,
sure,
but they'll have it. Look, I'll show you. These are my objectives and key results. Has my accountability, has the mission of the organization, and it boils down a couple of things. So our mission is, if we had to boil down our vision and our mission, it's empowering courageous leaders. Okay. So if you ask anyone, what do? We empower courageous leaders. And they say, well, Fidel, well, what are your objectives and key results? And they're three words: people, finances, and operations. And so that's what I focus on every day. And if what I'm doing isn't aligned with one of those three areas, then I know I'm not forwarding what we need to be doing. So it keeps me on track, keeps everybody on track. And it's important, to be accountable for what it is that you say you're going to do.
Yeah, I love that. And I think transitioning, we're kind of hitting towards kind of the day-to-day work, but you are the president and CEO of the Hispanic Scholarship Fund. Can you give those in our audience that may not be as familiar with the work as others, kind of a high level of what that work includes?
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, I'm an alum. So I received a scholarship from the Hispanic Scholarship Fund back when I was a freshman in 1986 at Harvard.
Yeah, can you share more about that story? Because that's something in our research that came up and really powerful.
Yeah, no. So I'll share a little bit about HSF, and then I'll share a little bit about my sort of origin story with HSF. But HSF has been around since 1975. And in that span, we've awarded over $675 million in scholarships. We have over 65,000 alumni, alumni that include Anthony Romero, who's the executive director at the ACLU, Rosie Rios, who was the treasurer for with the Obama administration. Her name is on a bunch of currency still, I think. And then just countless other individuals in every industry that you can imagine. I joined the board in 2010, and while I was a partner at a private equity firm as an alum, and just enjoyed that so much so that when the opportunity became available, I became the CEO in 2013. So I've been here since the beginning of 2013. And we've pivoted somewhat in that, in addition to the scholarships piece, we've also built out, invested heavily in building out our technology platform. So we also like to say we're an education technology company that happens to be a nonprofit. And we leverage that platform to not only provide the scholarships and the programs that we provide, but to now also provide those programs for other organizations, companies, institutions. And a lot of the work that we do now is around support services for parents, for K through 12 students, for our high school students, for our college students and scholars that we support, graduate students, young alumni. And we also have a career services team. We have 8 full-time recruiters in our staff that work with our partners to find talent, that also work with our scholars to prepare them for these amazing, opportunities. And again, we use that technology platform to deliver other programs. So we are also the administrators for the Gates Scholarship. So you might be familiar, the Gates Scholarship is now, I think, the preeminent scholarship for low-income minority students in the country, and HSF is administrating that program on behalf of the Gates Foundation. And we also do administer scholarships programs for Wells Fargo, for Toyota, for Kaiser Permanente. We just administered the College Board's National Recognition Program.
Wow.
So our team does all those things as well. So we're really busy around here, and we also do a lot of education, sort of educating people on the process of how to prepare, plan, and pay to go to college. So just this last Saturday, we had a Zoom webinar. We had over 3,000 parents and students from over 46 states, 11 countries that signed in to learn how to prepare, plan, and pay for college. So that's a little bit about HSF. And then my connection is when, as a first generation college student, my father was a carpenter, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. How my dad helped me prepare for my application process was he brought home a desk from a law firm where they were renovating and said, "Here you go. Now you have somewhere to do your applications on." It was really sweet of him.
That's where the hard work started. That's where that's where it came in.
I had this big lawyer's desk that took up half of my, the bedroom that I shared with my 2 other brothers. I'm the oldest of 8 kids.
Okay.
So I think one of them used it as a bed from time to time. But anyway, so that's where I did my applications. And when I applied to college, I applied to, because I only had 5 fee waivers. Mm-hmm. I didn't know then, and we tell our students now that you can actually apply yourself for fee waivers from universities if you can't afford to pay the fee to submit your applications. But because I didn't know that, I received 5 fee waivers from my counselor, and I applied to UCLA, UC Santa Barbara, USC, Harvard, and Yale. And when I started to receive my letters, I was accepted to USC, UC Santa Barbara, and UCLA, but I didn't hear anything back from Harvard or Yale. So I was too embarrassed to let anybody know that I didn't get into Harvard or Yale. So I didn't say anything. And so I submitted my $500 deposit to USC, and that was it. I was going to USC. And forgot about it. And I was out on the baseball field in April, right end of March, right at the beginning of April. And we were getting ready for the state baseball championships. And I remember I was in the batter's box taking batting practice. And then I looked down the left field line. There was this cloud of dust on the service road. No cars ever came down that road. So all of us just stopped, like, what the hell's going on? And looked. And as I'm looking, I lowered my head, because I recognized my mom's, I call it a camioneta in Spanish. It's a station wagon, and she had all of my brothers and sisters in there. And she was driving, then she pulled into left field. My coach was so upset. He didn't know it was my mom. He was yelling
into the actual field, like beyond, like into fair play.
And stopped. She like came and made a left, almost hit the left fielder. And I had to run out there, and she had this envelope, and she was waving it out the window. Wow. She was saying, "Ábrelo, ábrelo," which means open it. So I, get the envelope. It's already opened, and so I took out the letter, and it said, "Congratulations, and you've been accepted to Harvard." And I put it back, and I ran back to the coach, and it was one of the best memories that I have. When you go from someone who is really upset at you to someone who's really proud of you in an instant, because he said, "Well, what did she want?" I said, "I got into Harvard." And he was like so angry that she was on the baseball field disrupting practice, but then at the same time was so proud, right, that I'd gotten into Harvard. So that was great. And anyway, so
and did you get back in the batter's box and then hit the game?
Yeah, no, yeah. I got back in. Well, I went into the dugout because the next guy was up. We were in a three-man rotation. So when I was in the dugout, I'll never forget, and my friend George Gallegos was there. He went on to be a Navy fighter pilot, great guy.
Wow.
And he said, hey, he said, Fidel, what did your mom want? She's like, oh, she just, wanted me to, gave me the envelope. I got into another school. He's like, well, where did you get into? I said, oh, I got into Harvard. He's like, where's that? And so it was
Worked out for George, all right. Yeah.
Yeah, it did, but it was fun. It was fun. Anyway, so I didn't know anything. So I bought a one-way ticket to go back to Harvard, to go to my freshman year, because my thought was, well, I'll just go to school and then work, make some money, and then buy a ticket and fly back in June. I didn't want to bother my parents with anything, right? They had I had 5 sisters and 2 brothers that they had to take care of while I was in college. But when I got to campus, I don't know when it was, but it was pretty early on. I was starting paying attention. I was like, wait, the schedule says the campus is closed at Christmas. I was like, what do you mean the campus is closed? Can I still stay in my room? They're like, no, you have to go home, and you can't stay here.
Mm-hmm.
And you could stay there for Thanksgiving, but not for Christmas. And I said, oh no, what am I going to do? So right about that time was when I received an envelope with a letter from Ernest Robles, the founder of HSF, and $1,000 scholarship, which at the time in 1986 might as well have been, $20,000.
Sure.
But 10,000 was just, $1,000 was amazing. And that's what I used to get back home for Christmas, to get back, and then ultimately to get back. So HSF has had a warm place in my heart, since that moment.
So many places to pick up. I'm gonna butcher this, so give me some grace. One, I love the specificity of that memory of left field, of in the batter's box, of the dirt coming up on the road that's never come. Talk about whether that's just your sort of memory or not, but how important that moment is in your life.
Yeah. No, I'm sure it wasn't exactly like that, but that's how I remember it. And I do remember my coach. I remember George. I remember my mom with my brothers and sisters packed in the car. And the reason I know they were all in there was because she had just picked up my sisters at the front of the school, because 2 of them were going to high school with me, and all of them with the other ones in tow. And thank God they didn't have seatbelt laws back then, because they wouldn't have been able to. We would have had to get we would have had to get one of those Sprinter vans or something, but yeah, so great memory. And by the way, she did the same thing the next day, but she didn't come on the field, and it was the Yale envelope. So I got into Yale as well. And the funny part about that story is once I got in, I realized I was going to go. It was my dream to go to Harvard. I had never been to Harvard, never been on a plane, but it was my dream, right? And so I had to go to USC to ask for $500 back. And they felt sorry for me. Oh, poor kid doesn't know that schools don't send acceptances until April, so they felt sorry for me and gave me back my $500. And what's funny though is I still receive USC alumni like magazines and newsletters, because technically I was accepted and I accepted. They don't care if I didn't graduate. I'm right. Still a alum. So, fight on.
Go Trojans.
Go Trojans.
Oh man. Back-to-back days in the Vargas house with one acceptance to Harvard and the next to Yale.
Yeah, and by the way, the other side of that story, while it's a great memory and it's funny and it makes me and others laugh, it also is a reminder to me of just the fact that first generation college students, a lot of the challenges come in not so much in the real sort of challenges or obstacles, but in the subtle unknowing of things, right? It's the sharing of knowledge and information, knowing how the process is supposed to work, demystifying that process so that you don't have to feel embarrassed because you don't know something, because that's what I felt. And mostly because I felt, it wasn't my parents' fault. They just didn't know. Yep. And there wasn't a lot of resources or people that I could talk to. That's less of a challenge today, but it's still a challenge for many, many students. And so we work really hard here at HSF because of that, make sure that that's not an obstacle that keeps someone from applying to the best school that they can get into.
I think it's a great point. I appreciate you sharing. I mean, I was a first gen college student myself and still remember my, me and my parents, again, mostly my parents trying to figure out the FAFSA and just not knowing until somebody teaches you, understands it. But even to your point, I think so much of what we see in the importance of groups like yours and others is, kids and humans are resilient and smart and figure it out, but they don't know what they don't know. And they can, master calculus, but if they don't know that they're supposed to, that they can't stay on campus, that's just something they don't know. They need a plan for that. And if they have a plan, they can figure it out. But without those skills or expectations, we're not setting students or these humans up for success.
Oh, that's right. And that's, and frankly, that's the biggest, people ask me all the time, they'll tick off, college is so expensive and, the requirements and it's so many people applying and all these things that are, and is college really worth it? And, and all of those things could be things that we could focus on. But the thing that we find that is the biggest impediment is that lack of information. It's what you said, it's not knowing what you don't know. So if you don't know, and by the way, most parents don't know that there are schools in this country, some of the most selective universities in this country, that if your child is able to get into one of those schools, while you might see the price tag as 75,000 a year, or 80,000 or 85,000 a year, most people don't know that at these selective schools like Stanford and Harvard and Chicago and Rice and others, Duke, that if you come from a family that makes less than $150,000 in total income, you qualify for essentially having your entire tuition paid for.
That's right.
If you go to us, if your parents or family earns less than $65,000 a year, it's not only tuition, but it's every expense that's in the cost of attendance. So essentially it's a $75,000 scholarship. So if you're a student, an exceptional student that is able to qualify to get into one of these schools, but you don't apply because you think you can't afford it, you're cutting yourself off before you even, you're striking out before you even take a swing, right?
Yeah.
At the plate. And so we tell our scholars to take that swing. What's the worst that can happen? And what we're finding is certainly for low-income students, regardless of their background, they're able to go to school, right, for free. And that is something that I think many people don't understand. So we can get caught up, and yes, it is very expensive. The cost of higher education has skyrocketed, and we need to focus on how we can make it more affordable. By the same token, there are students today that could qualify to get into Stanford or Harvard or Chicago or USC or other schools where their financial aid awards would more than make up for what they need to do to get through those experiences. So it's information that's the most important, we believe.
Yeah, and I'd imagine too, with my own teaching experience and the students you speak about, they've already overcome so many challenges and hurdles along the way that when they have that information, they show up on campus, they have the skill sets and the persistence and the ability to navigate those tough situations where not only are they going, they already have the skill set and the mindset to be successful.
Yeah, no, that's right, and that's really important.
And, I love, a few moments ago when you talked about not only as an, what some might see as the outside, as an organization that supports and gives scholarships and counseling and that sort of level of support, but specifically said ed tech company and tech platform. Can you speak, can you just share more about why you specifically call that out as you describe the organization?
Yes. So my background is in finance. So I spent my career after Harvard Business School in private equity and venture capital, and had some exposure to venture-backed companies that were in the technology space in particular. And certainly my firm prior to HSF, we had invested in 47 private equity and venture capital funds that in total backed about 350 underlying portfolio companies. And in each one of those, people, technology, all of those things are really, really important. So when when I became CEO, one of the first things that that I was focused on is what is our infrastructure? What is the platform that enables us to scale what we need to do? And not unlike other nonprofits, we had an adequate sort of, system. The challenge was we couldn't customize it. And every time we tried to customize it, because we were essentially leasing someone else's platform, it cost us an arm and a leg. And so finally I said, you know what, why don't we had a great CIO at the time, and she and I sat down and said, okay, let's build a strategy, and what, if you could dream anything, what would it be? And she went off and came back with the plan and said, this is how much it's going to cost. And so we went to a couple of funders. We went to Wells Fargo and Target, and each of them committed $500,000 a year for 3 years so that we could invest and build out this, what we called HSF 2.0,
Wow.
which would be not only our sort of our platform for the scholarship application, but the beginnings of HSF University, the beginnings of a mentor match program, the beginnings of coaching and career services. And so we built that out, and that is in fact what got the attention of the folks at the Gates Foundation that said, okay, come up to Seattle, show us what you're doing and tell us more about this. And because of that, we were able to then, the grant from the Gates Foundation is a $417 million grant for the Gates Scholarship to be the administrator of the Gates Scholarship. So if you went to the gatesscholarship.org, you wouldn't see HSF mentioned anywhere. It's the Gates Scholarship, but we're the organization that's behind that platform. And so it's our team that is administering, implementing, doing all the work that's required to make that happen. And so we've continued to enhance that platform. And right now, in 2018 or 19, we received a grant, $30 million grant from the Lilly Endowment to further enhance, to expand, and even further what the reach of what we're doing. So the expansion that's being funded by the Lilly Endowment is going to enable us to provide career services and career guidance in a scalable way. So we're projecting that we're going to be providing those services for somewhere between, in addition to the 20,000 HSF scholars that we currently have, an additional 200 to 300,000 Hispanic college students across the country.
Wow.
So that's why I say we're an education technology company that happens to be a nonprofit.
As you should. The innovation and leadership is incredible. And connecting back to where we started, not that you or the organization has this mindset, but not being afraid to strike out in that sense with, trying to build something internally rather than just grab it from somebody else. That's a big risk, a lot of staff time and capacity, raising money, target and wells, not names you want to necessarily disappoint. But being able to have that confidence to do that and take that risk certainly paid off for you and those you serve.
Yeah, there were times where we were wondering whether or not we should have done that. But those are the times you have to weather the storm. You have to have faith that the strategy that you've sort of marked for yourself, the path that you've laid out, because you've sort of understand where you are and where you're going, that's this is the way to go. So I say a lot of times around here, I'm kind of stealing from I think it's the Philadelphia 76ers, trust the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now there are a lot of teams in Major League Sports that are saying, hey, you got to trust the process, a lot of data analytic driven stuff. And we're no different. And so we trust the process. It's like, this is, we've laid the path, and now do the work and trust the process.
I think it's great. I want to pivot a little bit as we start closing out. You serve on a number of boards. You're a well-esteemed leader across the country. One specific that stood out was the Charter School Growth Fund. Can you speak more about that work and why you particularly serve on that board, and have charters and districts come up a lot in these conversations? And gonna send you some friendly follow-up questions afterwards as well.
Sure. So like you, I'm also a certified high school teacher.
Mm,
I received my certification when I was a senior at Harvard. I had completed all my coursework,
and what did you
and
teach?
I was certified to teach. It's the government, world
Okay.
history, history, those subjects, social studies. And I did my student teaching at Jeremiah Burke High School in Roxbury in Boston. And I never got to teach after. I didn't teach, but I know I have my certificate somewhere. I know I probably have to take some standardized tests to get looped back in. But if this doesn't work out, that's my next plan.
There you go. You
Uh,
heard it here
go
first.
back.
Yeah.
I'll go back to the classroom. And then, my mother was a community organizer as well as a school liaison. So she worked in the schools, helping parents with the schools. I have two sisters who are elementary school teachers. One who works at a Montessori school, and another one who works for like an after school support program in education. So education is huge in my family. So I give that as context for when the opportunity came and I was approached to serve on the Charter School Growth Fund. It made complete sense. I am a proponent of doing whatever we can to improve education and educational outcomes. And charter schools which are independent, publicly funded schools, are one of the sort of the strategies or aspects or steps in the process to create better outcomes and to learn how we can improve the educational experience. We certainly face a lot of challenges in our country, and so for me, being part of the Charter School Growth Fund is my way of continuing to contribute to making our schools better and making the educational process in our country better, and ideally improving educational outcomes for all students, regardless of their socioeconomic or heritage or racial or any of that.
And I know what we say as the Shermco organization around charter schools and our stance, and also personally what I say at parties or the gym around charter schools. But playing devil's advocate, curious of like what you would offer to somebody that maybe is anti-charter or thinks, I guess just that, or anti-charter. What maybe advice would you offer or insight would you offer to maybe help them reconsider their position?
So first of all, again, these are, charter schools are, publicly funded independent schools, which are open to, any student. And that's the kind of school that that's what I think of when I think of a charter school that's run really well and that's committed to producing outcomes. And I'm supportive of public schools or public school education that is doing the same thing. I have friends who are principals, who are administrators, who are, and I support the work that they do. My kids went, and through eighth grade, they went to public schools. Two of my kids were in dual immersion programs, which I think are incredibly valuable.
Mm-hmm.
So fundamentally, I think we're all on the same page. We're trying to improve the public education system in this country. And so I'm all for looking for as many different ways to do that as possible, and continuing to encourage, adequate and increased funding, and that funding is utilized in the way that drives outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we shy away from focusing on accountability in any industry, I think we're in trouble. So I think the accountability conversation in education is a really kind of thorny conversation to have. Certainly, if you're in a school district as a teacher or as an administrator and you're under-resourced, it can become incredibly challenging. So there's other ways that we can think about how to do that. By the same token, we shouldn't dismiss out of hand just the opportunity to try new things, to innovate and to learn, and with the ultimate aim to improve educational outcomes, to improve the experience, and to ensure that students, again, regardless of their socioeconomic background, have equal opportunity to succeed.
Yeah, I think sometimes, from the leaders we look to and admire the most, like yourself, one, they're not often arguing that the situations aren't tough in any sort of neighborhoods, that teaching is easy and supporting kids is easy, but that accountability still matters. And going back to sports, that's often more cut and dry, like you win, you lose, you strike out, you hit the ball. And there's different variables in those level playing fields as well. But accountability is still something that's expected. And to your point, most reasonable people, we'd argue, think that a level of accountability and outcomes can still be had in public education and other aspects of the work as well.
We need to have those. Most people don't realize that the last that I looked, I think it was 34%, only 34% of Americans have a 4-year college degree, which means 66% don't. And having an education isn't a prerequisite for anything. However, all the studies have, like every survey study that you see, shows that as our world becomes more and more complex, more driven by technology, that having certification or training or additional education is critical for people individually to be competitive in the marketplace for jobs, for careers. And so if we're not doing more to focus on how we're going to solve that in terms of providing those pathways for people to pursue higher education or pursue additional certifications or training, then we're just shortchanging ourselves as a nation. And that is something that concerns me deeply. So anything that anyone's doing to try to create, to innovate and to make the experience of education better, and certainly in K through 12, we just have to, we can't give up. We have to keep trying to do that.
We're gonna get you out of here on a few rapid fire questions. First one's a 2-part. What's one thing listening audience can do to help celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, and then also the Hispanic Scholarship Fund?
Sure. So it's Hispanic Heritage Month every day here at HSF because of what we do. I think what everyone can do is take a moment to learn. Also, I'll just give you a couple of facts, right? If I say what percentage of Hispanic children in the US who are 18 or under are US citizens, most people would probably guess, somewhere between 50 to 70%. The numbers, and this is an old number that was in The Economist, and it's a Census Bureau number. It's probably higher now, but it's 93%. So 93% of Hispanic children, so 18 or under in the US are US citizens. So what does that mean? It means that they're US citizens. We're Americans. We're not going anywhere. We love this country. So that's one important fact. And if I said, what is the ratio of Asian American to Hispanic college students? So how many Asian Americans for every Hispanic? Most people guess, 3 to 1, just sort of the kind of because of the narrative that you, and when in fact there's 2.5 times more Hispanic college students than there are Asian American students in the country. And so that's not good or bad. It's not. It's just a date. It's data. It's a number. Why do I share those two data points? Because I think in most instances, people who are not familiar or haven't, don't know anyone who is Hispanic have perceptions. And so learning, educating ourselves about our other communities, about each other, I think is one thing that we can all do when we have the moment to do that. And Hispanic Heritage Month is one of those. And then in terms of HSF, and we're doing great work. We're just a quick kind of metric. 95 cents of every dollar that we spend goes to scholarships or programs. Only 5 cents this last year went to administration or fundraising. So if you give $1 to HSF, 95 cents of that dollar is going to go to scholarships or programs. So you can visit hsf.net, learn more about what we do, support our work. We're doing, I think, great work across the country where, we have 40 advisory councils all across the U.S. We're,
one in Charlotte I saw as I was doing my research.
Yeah,
Charlotte and Nashville.
There's one in Orlando, Nashville, Memphis, Cincinnati, in addition to, Phoenix, LA, Houston, Boston, New York. Where anywhere there's an NFL team or an NBA team or a Major League Baseball team, we have an advisory council in that market. So
you didn't do that on purpose so you could get access to sports.
Oh, I love sports. Yeah, no, those
Doesn't overlap.
Those happen to be communities that have a high Hispanic, percentage in terms of the population, and we have lots of our partners as well in those cities. So it makes everything a whole lot easier to do. So that's what I would encourage you to do. Everyone to do is to support the work we do at HSF. And again, you can visit hsf.net.
Yeah, we'll definitely share that in the show notes and drive people to the website. Last question, President Vargas, what does Square Pizza remind you of?
It reminds me of my sophomore, actually not just my sophomore, it reminds me of college. We used to have Square Pizza at Harvard. They used to make it in the cookie sheets.
Yep.
And that's, I remember, I'd never seen Square Pizza before. So, but it takes me back to my days at the dining hall at Leverett House, where I was a sophomore. That's what I was going to say, but I remember grabbing the pizza. At least that's what I remember. I don't know. It was a long time ago.
Hopefully good memories, the ones that you do remember from those days.
I have great memories of at Harvard. Yeah.
Mr. Vargas, we appreciate it. Thanks so much for taking time and sharing all the incredible work and leadership lessons you've learned along the way.
No, glad to be here and glad to join you, Greg. Good luck.
Thank you. Can we stop the stream?